it is again. You see something being waved around in front of the camera. We're going to pull back a little bit to aid with the focus of this wonderful product, the Malcolm Tent Power Duo, featuring Mad Brother Ward's Sonic Sauna on cassette. Take a look at that, kids. It's a real life honest to God cassette. Let's see how the focus works on this thing here, this brand new camera. You've heard me bitching, griping, and moaning for a long time about the inadequacies of my previous internet camera. Well, wouldn't you know it, La Dama Dorada y su esposa en Tucson, Arizona sent me a new camera. We're going to check it out, put it through its paces today, and see how it does. Thank you, Dama Dorada, which is in English the Golden Girl, and indeed her esposa Juan too. Thank you guys so much for the camera. Let's see what the people have to say out there. Y'all want to chime in and tell me a little bit something about the merits and or demerits of my brand new internet camera? What do you think? Talk to me. Post a comment. Jenny DeSoto from the wilds, and I do mean wilds of New Jersey, is saying, hi, my birthday buddy and long-standing trashy in good stead. Welcome aboard, Jen. How do I look? How do I sound? This is the first time ever that I've tried this brand new camera, and I'm very excited because people who see me in real life, in person, sometimes they get a look at the back of my head and they see that gleaming expanse of shiny skin and they say, Tent, how did your dome get into that condition? Why so? Why so? Well, it comes from tearing my hair out because of technology. I think I might have even got some there. I'm going to throw some of that hair, some of those pullings at you. See what the definition is. Yes, indeed. I did. Oh, look at that. I don't know if you can see that hair, but that was definitely real, honest-to-God Malcolm Tent hair flying through the air. And that's why I've got the chrome dome right there, because of technology making me tear the stuff out. Yes, Jenny, I did shave today. I'm glad you noticed. Glad you noticed. Larry says I should turn up the volume. I don't think this thing has a volume control. You might have to turn up the volume yourself. I can't really talk a whole lot louder than this. I tend to make my larynx kind of rough and gruff and weary and teary if I scream and yell too much at the camera. So I'm going to tell you, this is kind of a learning experience for all of us here on Tent Talks Tunes. Yeah, it's been a very interesting week. I've been busy as a dog. I've been busier than two dogs chasing a cat, as a matter of fact. There's just like so much going on here at TPOS headquarters. Been grinding out a lot of product, if you'll pardon the term. So I guess that we'll check the billboard first. You know that when we have Tent Talks Tunes, we check the billboard, we check the bulletin board, we check the mail, and then we get into the meat of the matter, which is, of course, the tunes. So yeah, we checked the mailbox already. We know that this fabulous new camera was contained in that. Thank you, Dama Dorada. That's the mailbox. Let's see what's on the billboard. What kind of advertisements are we reading on the billboard today? Well, I kind of teased one a second ago. Brand new release from TPOS, my label, the Malcolm Tent Power Duo, featuring Mad Brother Ward, the Sonic Sauna. 60 minutes of sculpted guitar sounds and weird-ass noise blended and harmonized and layered by yours truly at TPOS Studios, which is where I'm sitting right now. It's on cassette, it's on CD. The cassettes are all numbered and also hand-signed. I don't know if you can really see that. Any camera can possibly do it justice, but Mad Brother Ward and myself signed every single one of these things. Limited edition of 102. $10 each postpaid in the U.S. from me, Malcolm Tent. You can also go on to Discogs and eBay and purchase 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or anything around 100 if you want. We sold some already. And you can also contact me directly via PayPal or cold hard cash, baby. P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut 06470. Anybody who sends me 2 standing Liberty quarters minted between the year 1916 and 1931 will receive 1 Mad Brother Ward Malcolm Tent cassette or CD if you want. All it requires is two standing Liberty quarters. Send me 2 of those, I'll send you 1 of these. How's that for a deal? It's a real good deal. Besides that, I've been reaping the bonanza of one of my favorite new discoveries in the musical arena, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you don't know anything about them, you might want to look them up. In a nutshell, they are an Australian prog band with a great sense of humor and top-shelf musicianship. And they're very wacky and very eccentric, and I love that. I'm not much of a prog fan myself. If you've been watching Tent Talks Tunes for any period of time, I don't think you will have actually heard me talk about any prog at all. Maybe King Crimson has been mentioned once or twice. Maybe. That's about as proggy as I get. I don't like Yes. I don't like Vandergraaf Generator. I don't like Rush. I'm more of a retro guy. I'm more of a reg rocker than a prog rocker. I'm into regression. But King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard are an awful lot of fun. And they're very fan-friendly. They've actually created an entire series of releases that are free use. They provide you with the audio files, the artwork files, and say, go ahead and release it. Do whatever you want. Just send us a few. So I've been working on a King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard reel-to-reel tape. We've talked about cassettes here. We've talked about 8-tracks. I'm sure we've talked about reels occasionally. But reels, this is a reel-to-reel tape on my label TPOS, the King Gizzard and the Wizard Lizard. And it features a remix of one of their songs done in the same fashion as the Mad Brother Ward Malcolm Tent power duo. It's an ambient, wacky soundscape that alternates between being really fun and really scary. And I'm going to launch this later tonight on my Discogs and eBay sites. So if you like this kind of stuff, check it out. Good listening from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, mutated and filtered through my brain by me, moi, yours truly. All right, gang, I think we've taken care of all the business. Let's have some fun and talk about tunes, shall we? That was a full gallon this morning. Check it out. I'm almost halfway there. The day is not even halfway over yet. Making good progress on my imbibement of the Volta. Let's scan down for a second here. See who's tuned in. Hey, Per from Sweden, what's going on? Now Jenny says it sounds like an echo with the voice. Well, we just might have to live with it today because the camera's hooked up and I ain't stopping. So just pretend it's like a psychedelic experience. It's mind expanding. It kind of looks like this and it sounds like this. Whoa. I've got an inquiry here. Did I find any Ted Franco records? Not yet. I have an inquiry for Ted Franco records. If you guys want another completely eccentric, wacky, off-the-wall treat, look up Ted Franco. Franco spelled with a K. And it's another one of those deals. Just looking him up and reading about him probably doesn't do justice to the man's music. I've been a big Ted Franco fan for a very long time, and I very well likely have some Ted Franco in my inventory, but I have to go downstairs and look. So check it out. Have patience. I'm on the case. Might take a few minutes for me to do it, but I will do it. I'm not very fond of letting people down. I try very hard not to do that. So Ted Franco, it's in the trap. Hello, Benjamin Martin. It's Wednesday, baby. It's Wednesday. It's live. It's happening. Benjamin, if you're just tuning in right now, make sure you scroll back and check out all the great stuff I was talking about that I'm trying to sell to you. Please, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, what was today's topic going to be? I had no idea. This is the truth, man. I woke up this morning and I really had no idea what to talk about. It happens sometimes. You could call it writer's block. You could call it a creative impasse. You could call it a brain fart. You could call it whatever you want. But sometimes, sometimes it's more about perspiration than inspiration. And so I didn't know what I was going to talk about. So I didn't think about it. I just didn't concern myself with it. Didn't think about it at all. Whatever. Figured that 7 o'clock would roll around one way or another, as it typically does. Apologies to all of you millennialist Christians out there, but yes, the time does march on, and we do continue to make our way from one day to another, and 1 week to another, and 1 year to another, and it's not going to end at any particular time soon. 7 o'clock would roll around, and I would turn the camera on, and I would sit down, and I would talk to you people about something. Well, here's what we're going to talk about. Some stuff that I kind of just found while I was bumbling around the house, slowly waking up and stretching and yawning and looking around, seeing what there was, and my eyes laid on a sight that made me very, very sad. Something that didn't quite bring a tear to my eye, but definitely made me a little bit lachrymose, just a smidge. It's right here. This one item, this one object that made me very, very sad. Now when I take it out of the sleeve, you'll probably say, what do you mean, one item? Anybody can tell very plainly by looking at this that this is two items. This is not one item, this is two items. Well, in a perfect world, this would still be one item. This would still actually be one complete 78 RPM record, not two pieces of a 78 RPM record. Now in the past on Tent Talks Tunes, I've talked about 78s. I've done at least one entire show about 78s and how much I love 78s. 78s are just wonderful, wonderful throwbacks in time and space, and they also have a unique sound of their own. They're thick, they're made on shellac instead of vinyl for the most part, and they've just got a sound to them. They're monophonic, they spin really fast, they've got a certain kind of a hiss and surface noise to them that just puts you in a time and a place that is just beautiful. I don't like to use words like nostalgia because I'm very much here and now, but it definitely puts you somewhere other than the present, and it's very cool. The drawback to 78s, as we're kind of seeing by the evidence of this one right here, is that they're very fragile. They are very fragile. It doesn't take much for them to break. And when they break, they almost always break in this kind of U-shaped pattern. Almost always. I don't know why that is. Maybe somebody out there on the internet research team can post the answer. Why 78s classically break in this shape? I don't know if it's because of maybe the chemical composition and molecular structure of the shellac that's used. I don't know. Someone out there knows. Anyway, why did it bum me out so much? Because I love this 78. This particular 78 was a favorite of mine for a really long time. It's a double A-side Socceroonie. You can see, how close can we get in with this thing and still keep focusing? That's not bad. But Officer by Steve Allen, backed by But Baby by Steve Allen. This record is hilarious. Well, I mean, listening to it at one time was hilarious. Now it's just kind of tragic to have to look at it. But this is a really funny record by Steve Allen, man. This is great. This is hilarious. And, by the way, if anybody wants to know how this record got broken, I don't know. I keep all of my 78s in these pretty good, sturdy, thick cardboard sleeves, and I store them all in a very heavy-duty plastic crate. When I looked at this record, just looked at this record, sitting there in the crate, peacefully, minding its own business in my closet, I noticed that it was not, it didn't look right. You couldn't see the label through the hole. And that only means one thing, baby. That means a piece is missing. This thing was just sitting in the crate. And the Verschlugener thing broke. I don't know why. I don't know how. Got nothing to lose. So it made me start thinking, though. Steve Allen. I started to cogitate a little bit upon Steve Allen. And I don't know if you guys out there know too much about Steve Allen, but if you're fans of 1950s music, especially 1950s rock and roll, you're probably aware of the fact that, and Jenny DeSoto, you know this, that Elvis Presley was a guest on the Steve Allen Show. And his segment was recorded, I believe, the very night before he and his band went into the studio to record Hound Dog, which is historically important. The night before going in to record one of the great rock and roll songs of all time. And Elvis and his band, Elvis, Scotty, and Bill, and DJ, were on the Steve Allen Show. The reason, however, that appearance is remembered so much is not because of the historical importance, but because of the fact that Elvis came out in a full tuxedo, and I believe a top hat, and sang Hound Dog to a droopy-faced basset hound. He was essentially schmaltzy, vaudevillian showbiz at its very worst. It was very typical of the stuff that you were subjected to on television and entertainment back then in general. It was all holdovers from the days of burlesque and the cheap stage. And so that's the kind of thing that you would totally see typically as entertainment. And so there was a lot of heat because of Elvis Presley putting on a tuxedo and singing to a hound dog. The song Hound Dog. It was just like so corny, so straight off the cob, man, pure corn. And so for a long time, people were like, well, why would Elvis do that? Why would he subject himself to that? Steve Allen, screw him, trying to mock Elvis. Now, you people know that I specialize in heretical statements. I do not like, well, how do I phrase it properly? I'm very skeptical about accepted mainstream narratives, especially when it comes to culture and music and art. I'm very skeptical and very picky about my history. So, as I thought about it, and this was actually, I was helped by reading this one book about Elvis called Last Train to Memphis. I forget the author's name, but it's an excellent, excellent biography of the early days of Elvis. And the author makes a very, very good point in his book. At the time that Elvis went onto the Steve Allen Show, Joe and Josephine Middle America, or at least their representatives in the press, were hysterical about the menace of Elvis Presley. The gyrating hips, the sneer, the fact that this inbred hillbilly Peckerwood was going to turn their daughters into prostitutes and their sons into Negroes. God help us all. We can't let this happen. He was probably a communist. It was like people were freaking the F out about the menace of Elvis Presley. Or at least in the mainstream press they were, in the newspapers, on radio shows, in what television there was at the time, magazine articles. The moral arbiters in the United States of America were completely terrified of Elvis. So, keeping in mind that Steve Allen had a very sardonic sense of humor, which he also took a lot of heat for, because that kind of sense of humor can be misinterpreted very easily. A lot of people don't get irony. A lot of people don't get subtlety. But considering that Steve Allen's sense of humor was very wry, Isn't it amazing that the way that they handled that when they had Elvis on the show in the middle of this controversy and this hysteria was to introduce, and this is where the introduction is very important, to introduce to everybody the new Elvis Presley. That's the key to it. Steve Allen says, don't worry, here he is, the new Elvis Presley. And out comes Elvis in a full tuxedo, singing to a cute basset hound. If that's not an awesome, very pointed commentary on the entire situation and the nature of showbiz itself, I will, well, first I would have to find an edible vegan hat. But once I find an edible vegan hat, I'll eat my hat. I'll eat that hat. If that is not a perfect lampoon of the hysteria of the time and the moral outrage over Elvis Presley. I think that's brilliant. And I think that if you watch that clip, and you know it's out there, so hopefully it's out there with the introduction and the performance itself. If you watch that clip and you keep that in mind, it makes a lot more sense. Makes a lot more sense. I mean, let's not forget, Steve Allen is the guy who had Frank Zappa on his show in 1963 playing a bicycle. And this is before Frank Zappa, like anybody knew who Frank Zappa was. He hadn't even made his first national record. That was years, the Mothers were like years down the road. Steve Allen had Frank Zappa on national TV playing a bicycle. You know, that's cool. The people can naysay all they want, but I think if they do, they're missing the point. Did it happen somewhere like about 1 million years ago? Yeah. Is it relevant? I don't know. But people know what I'm talking about. So it's at least that relevant. So I would raise my plastic jug of Danbury tap water to Steve Allen and to Elvis for making that happen. And also to making lemonade out of what was once a real juicy lemon, one of my favorite records in my 78 collection. I'm sure there's another one out there somewhere. If anybody's got one, there's my address. I'll send you something in return. Promise. People who have corresponded with me know that I love sending stuff back to people. It's a lot of fun. Let's take a scroll down there. Let's see. Scott Monroe indeed has ably pointed out that Steve Allen did exactly what he did. Welcome aboard, Scott. Scott, are you still in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas? Please let us know. We're concerned about your whereabouts. Phone home. So having done that, and got that off my chest, I figured, you know what? Let's just talk about stuff I've been listening to lately. I listen to a lot of things. There's hardly a day that goes by where I'm not playing stacks of records, or bundles of CDs, or cassettes, or 8-tracks, or, as we discussed a second ago, reel-to-reel tapes, whether I've made them or not. So, what have I been listening to lately? I'm going to tell you. Scott Monroe from Kansas City, Missouri. Salute! I got a few bands that I really like. I got a few favorite artists I really, really like. And oddly enough, not all of them have been talked about here on Tent Talks Tunes. So I'm going to address right now a dude I've been playing an awful lot of lately, who I don't think I've ever talked about. And this guy had a brief, maybe not too terribly brief, bubble of popularity in the late 80s and early to mid 90s. I was turned on to this guy by people who worked for me at my record store, Trash American Style. I actually owe, a pretty fair amount to the people who walked into Trash. Not only the people who worked for me, but my customers. People were always steering me in this direction or that direction. Usually they would want to know if I had something by a certain artist. And in my efforts to track something down, I would end up listening to them and sometimes finding some really, really cool stuff. And my employees were really great for that because they would play music in the store all the time. And I would either be like back in the office, or I'd be out running errands or whatever. I'd walk in the room and be like, what is this? What is this you're playing? This is really good. And that's how I discovered, not really a band, it's actually one dude trading under a band name. My Dad Is Dead. Quite frankly, I hate the name of that band. Can't stand the name of that band. But when you consider the subject matter and the mental frame of mind of the guy who is My Dad Is Dead, it kind of makes sense. You know, it's very much the rage right now to be a one individual project and give yourself a band name. Nothing wrong with that at all. I've worked with a lot of people who do that. But this guy, I think he did it first. I'm willing to say that Mark Edwards, that's Mark Edwards from Ohio, I'm pretty sure, and once again I invite correction, please chime in if anybody can tell me that I'm not right. I believe that Mark Edwards was the first guy to use a band name for a solo project. I mean, I had certainly never heard of such a thing. And we're not talking about vaudeville or, you know, prehistorical, pre-rock and roll history. I'm talking about rock and roll, baby. So this guy, you know, you might think it's unusual that I would like this guy as much as I do. The dude is depressed. His stuff is almost universally a downer. He writes relentlessly about the troubles in his life. Oh, man. Yeah, Benjamin Martin knows what I'm talking about. Ohio, Mark Edwards. The guy is like relentlessly depressing. It's like one song after another about, you know, relationships falling apart, his life falling apart. You know, he's got a song called Ask the Weatherman. The lyrics are basically, can you tell me why the skies, try to get it right here. I might be paraphrasing this. Can you tell me why in this city skies are always gray? The sun won't shine on my house today, and it's always cold outside. Like never before I feel the cold. I mean, I don't really subscribe to that kind of stuff. I'm a cheerful, happy-go-lucky guy, but man, he does it so well. That's the thing. He does it so well. The first time I ever heard My Dad Is Dead, it was from a double 7-inch EP called Shine that one of my employees was playing. I think it was Christopher Drew Ludwig who was playing it, because he was always playing new stuff. And I got hip to a lot of sounds because of what he would bring into the store and play. He was great that way. All of my workers were great that way. Everybody brought new sounds to the table. So I think it might have been him who was playing this double 7-inch EP by My Dad Is Dead. And upon hearing it, I was like, wow, this band is tight. This band is like, they've got ESP or something. The dual guitar interplay and the way the bass interpins the dueling guitars and the drums are so perfectly locked in to the whole thing, not just the bass part. It was like this unit, this single-minded unit making this really, really well-crafted, beautifully written rock music about how depressed this guy is. I was hooked almost instantly. It wasn't until later that I found that it is one guy. Most of his stuff is just Mark Edwards doing everything: guitar, bass, drums, keyboards, whatever. He does have records that he's released in collaboration with other players, but I kind of have a feeling that he was probably a real dictator with the way the record should sound. I have a suspicion that if somebody set foot into the studio with Mark Edwards, he told them what to play. Because all of his records, whether they're his complete solo efforts or band efforts, they just have that homogeneous, completely locked in sound. It's a real visionary sound, man, and it's just really, really good. So I've got a lot of My Dad Is Dead stuff. I don't know if I would go so far as to say I'm an active collector of him, but I got, you know, the Best Defense album, Let's Skip the Details, Out of Sight, Out of Mind, I've got Shine, or the extended version called Shiner, in my car CD player right now. And this one, Chopping Down the Family Tree. This was the record that the label, what label was he on? Scat at the time. This is the record that Scat Records bet the farm on. This was the one that they said, or were trying to make a star out of my dad is dead with. They put a big promotional push behind this one. The cover is really beautiful. It's a one, kind of like my Steve Allen record. It's a 1-2-piece cover with all this really cool embossing on it. It's embossed. See if we can, yeah, you can just about see the embossing. There you go. You can kind of see the embossing on it. It's die cut. The back is also die cut. Yay! And the picture they used is one of the less severe looking pictures of Mark Edwards. Usually pictures of him, he's got his like great big Coke bottle glasses, and he's wearing a really old man suit and tie, and you know, his orthopedic shoe, and it's like a really severe look. But for this one, they sort of gave a bit of a teen idol appearance, which is what labels do, you know, it's kind of their job. Nice full color insert with all the depressing lyrics, and the vinyl. This to this day is one of the best looking pieces of vinyl I've ever seen. Hope the camera can pick this up. It's black but with speckles in it. And even nowadays with all kinds of possibilities of wild, crazy colored vinyl, I just like this one because it's very sublime. Very sublime. It's a really good record. Great record. So I've been listening to a lot of My Dad Is Dead lately. I find it to be great driving music. And I don't even know what by this guy is still in print. He kind of disappeared from sight after a while. The follow-up album, like, needless to say, this album, which is called Chopping Down the Family Tree, was not a gigantic hit. And after that, he did at least one more record for Scat, maybe two. You can see that Scat's interest had waned a little bit because the follow-up album, which was indeed Out of Sight, Out of Mind, is a record in a cover, plain paper sleeve, regular black vinyl, and that's all she wrote. I know he did at least one album after this, maybe two, and then that was about the end of the road for My Dad Is Dead. Not even a lyric sheet, look at that. So if anybody knows what happened to Mark Edwards after My Dad Is Dead, or what he's doing now, feel free to post. Inquiring minds want to know. The dude was, and maybe still is, a musical genius. Deep, dark depression and all. I mean, hey, maybe sometimes you need depression to feel your creative mood, you know? Maybe that's what it takes. Maybe the guy would be in a good mood and just not feel like writing songs. I seem to remember, and you'll note this is a great segue into my next favorite artist that I'm going to talk about. I'm all about the masterful segue, and I'm all about the pregnant pause. True fact, why do stand-up comedians have a glass of water on a stool on stage all the time? For the pregnant pause. Very important for setting the pace. Pacing is vital. So I read this interview by a guy who's also one of my favorite artists. Excuse me for a second, I got a cough. Excuse me. Oh, yeah, it's the human element here on Tent Talks Tunes. If you ever wondered what it was like to be a human being, it's kind of like this. Sometimes water goes down the wrong pipe, and you got to clear your throat. It's embarrassing, I know, it sucks, I know. Sorry, guys. The human element. Excuse me. Read this interview. Pretty sure It was by Bob Mould. And Bob Mould said more or less to the effect that he couldn't write songs when he was in a good mood. His muse did not visit him when he was in a good mood and feeling happy. So if that's what it takes to write good music, hey, fly the flag. I'm all for it. I'm not going to rain on your parade. So you might wonder, well, you're talking about Bob Mould. What could that possibly segue into? What of my favorite artists, which of my favorite artists could be conjured up at the mention of Bob Mould? Does anybody care to venture a guess? Who out there knows me? Scott? James Pogo? Who knows me out there? Who's going to venture a guess as to which artist is going to inevitably be mentioned after I drop the name of Bob Mould? And by the way, yes, you guys are right. Clark Kent was Stuart Copeland's solo project under... But then again, I'm going to disagree because Clark Kent's just a pseudonym. It's not a band name. I'm going to leave it at that. Clark Kent's a pseudonym, not a band name. I'm going to stick with my assertion that My Dad Is Dead is the first solo project trading under a band name. I'm going to leave it at that. So let's see. Prehistoric John, who's watching now, he knows me very well. One of my illustrious ancestors as bass player in the almighty anti-scene. Mr. Prehistoric John has ventured a very good guess, and Mr. James Pogo has mentioned also a very good guess. But you guys are not quite on the mark. You're not quite on the money. You're not quite there. If I mention Bob Mould, you know for a damn fact that the next name out of my gob, with the next breath I take, it's going to be Grant Hart, motherfucker. Grant Hart. I've been playing a lot by Grant Hart lately. It's just one of those things. This happened. It was just a really wild, nonsensical thing. I don't even know why, but I was sitting here at my desk, the desk upon which my camera rests, just sitting here. I was filling, I was packing mail orders, getting stuff out, like the Malcolm Tent power duo featuring Mad Brother Ward. I was packing some of these and shipping them out. And I'm sure tonight I'll be packing and shipping some of these great King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard reel-to-reel tapes. Because of all you people who have seen me on Discogs and eBay and want to order my stuff. Just saying. Just saying. I was packing and shipping, and for some whatever weird reason, I felt like going onto YouTube and looking up Nova Mob 1994. Just out of nowhere. I don't even know why, but I did. And so I found, and this is how it all begins, I found one video that really scratched my itch. It was a video of a Nova Mob sound check from somewhere in Europe in 1994. And it had the Nova Mob sound that I was specifically looking for, which is a version of the Nova Mob. By the way, Nova Mob was Grant Hart's band after Husker Du. He was basically on an axis of Grant Hart and Tom Merkel on bass. They were the axis of musical evil upon which the Nova Mob turned, with a rotating cast of drummers and an occasional second guitar player. Grant Hart played guitar in the Nova Mob for the entire run of the band except the very, very end of the band. And this relates directly to, let's see if I got it on vinyl here. I didn't grab all of the stuff. I just grabbed a few props. At the very end of the band, they released a self-titled album called Nova Mob. And it was a great album. Really, really good album. With a 4-piece lineup. Grant on guitar, Chris Hessler on lead guitar, Tom Merkel on bass, and Steve Sutherland on drums. And it's kind of like the My Dad is Dead record that I spoke about earlier. The label that they were on, which was Restless Records, was getting ready to push it. And I was talking to the label because I'm a huge fan. I said, whatever you want, I'll do whatever I can to sell as many of these as I possibly can. You know, I'll promote it any way I can. And I was talking to my sales rep one day, and they said, you know, we're behind this record, and we love Grant and we love the band, but he can't keep a band together. We can't push this record because he can't keep a lineup together. And I was like, oh God, not again. And sure enough, the lineup I just mentioned, the four-piece, had fallen apart, and now Grant was back on drums. Ooh. Now that is an extremely interesting proposition, because Grant, one of my favorite songwriters, love the stuff he writes, with Husker Du, with the Nova Mob, as a solo, love his writing, but as I critique it, his guitar playing was kind of limited. He didn't really ever do much beyond fairly basic rhythm guitar playing. When the Nova Mob were a trio, with just him and Tom Merkel on the bass and whatever drummer they had at the moment, it was good. You know, it was okay. They did their first album as a trio, The Last Days of Pompeii, and it was good. It was definitely good. It's got some awesome songs on it, but it just didn't quite hit the mark. It just didn't really satisfy the urge. Now this remix version, which they call it a remix, but there's actually a lot of re-recorded stuff on here. Like there's new everything parts, new production. This comes a hell of a lot closer to what the album could have been, because it's got layers of sound that are not on the original Nova Mob Last Days of Pompeii album. This is way closer. Grant retooled this record to the max, and it's a lot better than the original. But to get to the point, when the Nova Mob would tour as a three-piece, as a trio with Grant on guitar, it just didn't quite hit it, you know. And I went to go see them a lot. I followed them on tour. Any chance I could get to see the Nova Mob, I would. But the three-piece Nova Mob, in my opinion, just never quite reached the stars. They came a lot closer when they got Chris Hessler in the band playing lead guitar. It really fleshed out the sound. It filled it out. He was an excellent player. And Steve Sutherland was a drummer who had a real good groove, real good swing to his playing. And of course Tom Merkel was a damn monster on the bass. I mean, just a beast. And then Grant singing and playing rhythm guitar, playing all of his songs. Great combination. I remember going to see that lineup of the band at CBGB in, I believe, late 1993, November of 1993. The band drove all the way from South St. Paul, Minnesota to New York City to play this showcase gig for the brand new album, drove back, and then Steve Sutherland was no longer in the band. For whatever reason, I don't know. Who can guess? I don't know. But no drummer anymore. And obviously they're going to have to tour and support this record. So what happens? Grant gets back behind the drums. I'm going to guess because it was simply the easiest solution at hand. And probably solved a few problems, because I remember clearly when I was following the Nova Mob on their tour in 1992 through the South, I was having pizza with their drummer, a guy named Mark Reddish, in Atlanta. And Mark was a really cool guy. And he would not dish or say anything bad about Grant or band relationships or anything like that. But he did allude to the fact that Grant could be difficult. because Grant himself was a drummer. And it's very hard for a drummer to play for another drummer, was kind of the gist of what he was saying. And I can see that, especially when you're, a writer like Grant who has a very clear idea of what songs are supposed to sound like. So that might explain why there was some turnover in the drum throne, and why it was also perfect that Grant would be the drummer in the Nova Mob. And watching this video of them just sound checking, they're just before a gig, they're getting the sound worked out to an empty room somewhere in Europe, and Grant behind the drums, like a locomotive rolling down the tracks. I was watching that, I was just like, oh my God, that's where he belongs. That's Grant. That is his seat of power. That's what drives the whole thing. And then Chris Hessler on guitar, he actually adjusted his style to throw in more drone notes and less lead. So, God help me, he was playing a lot like Bob Mould. Very strange how that ended up working out. Lots of drone in Hessler's guitar playing. And then Grant playing that locomotive guitar, that locomotive drum with the ride cymbals and the harmonics that arise from that. He was a whole different animal. And the comparisons to Husker Du are inevitable. They just are. They're just inevitable. So imagine Husker Du with Tom Merkel playing bass. Whole different thing. I'm not saying better, I'm not saying worse, just a whole different thing. And that's the version of the Nova Mob that never recorded anything. Luckily, there are tons of live tapes out there, fair amount of audio. Just this one video clip I found. I haven't yet to see an entire show of this lineup anywhere. Lord have mercy. That triggered me into listening to lots of Grant's solo work, which is fantastic, because it's kind of like the remix version of the Nova Mob record. He does everything himself, and it's got layers and layers of sound and layers of harmony and cool instrumentation and all these head arrangements, and it's right there on vinyl, and it's symphonic in a kind of a stripped down way. So you got this version, the original SST version, and you'll note the cut corner, which denotes it being one of several billion SST promos that found themselves in record stores and radio stations and cutout bins all across this great world of ours. The original SST version with the original cover art, and then the very telling Grant version on his own Condor label. If you can read it, it says Sic Semper Tyrannis. Could that be a dig at SST? I don't know. There it is in full color, bold as brass. And of course, 180 gram remaster. It sounds pretty much identical to the original to me. I don't think the remaster did a whole lot. And it is my fervent opinion that 180 gram vinyl is just a big scam. And we might get into that later if I feel like it on a future episode of Tent Talks Tunes. I try to keep it positive here. I don't like to get into my deep loathing for the record industry. But I might. If the people want to hear it, if they want to hear me dish some dirt from my unique perspective, having stood behind the record counter for 21 years and run my own label, and having been friends with a lot of people in the industry. I could dish dirt. I don't know. Leave a comment. Let me know if you want to hear me dish some dirt on why I hate the record industry. Just let me know. I'll talk if there's a demand for it. So yeah, the reissue, the remix, the remaster, the whatever. Grant's solo masterpiece, which came out a little while before he died. This is a double album, my friends, The Argument, based on John Milton's Paradise Lost. How many people do you know are going to write an album based on Milton's Paradise Lost? Well, that guy right there, Grant Hart, he did it. And it is a masterpiece masterpiece. Cannot recommend this one enough. I make no money on this recommendation. I'm a fan. The Argument, Grant Hart, the CD of which is also in my car, and I've been playing an awful lot of. And of course, tucked into my copy of The Argument by Grant Hart, I've got my souvenirs. Always got some souvenirs to be found, including this one, which I'm very, very, very fond of. This is an 11 by 17 promo poster of a gig that I played with Grant Hart at the Great Cafe 9 in New Haven. Grant made this collage art for the gig poster, which in its own right is pretty gosh dang cool. But not only that, if you look on the back, he signed them and he numbered them. That's going above and beyond the Call of Duty. That really is. So I, of course, yanked this one down off the window. Oops. Let me just throw my precious artifacts all over the place, shall I? Took this one, I believe, off the front door. So I got two of these. And you guys know that I make my living by selling stuff, but these are not for sale. This is the personal Malcontent Hope chest we're looking at here. These particular records are not for sale either. Mind you, I mentioned earlier about packing and shipping. I've been recently listing a lot of stuff on my Discogs store. So if you go and look up TPOS on Discogs, you'll see a ton of new stuff listed, which I'll be happy to sell you. Happy to sell you. Gosh dang. Prehistoric John is correct. Fugazi did have an album called The Argument, which actually predates the Grant Hart record. Hey, there you go. And hello, Cat. Good to see you on there. And Benjamin, yeah, oh boy. Ben wants to hear me dish some dirt. One vote for dirt dishing. Duly noted. It's in the column. It's been tallied. So far it's dishing dirt 1, keeping it clean. Oof. Just saying. And something else that's found its way into my car CD player is a live recording of the Nova Mob in LA. This is the third to last show they ever played. And this has got in full effect Grant on drums, Hessler on guitar, and Tom Merkel on bass. God damn, this is good. This is so good. Look it up. I'm sure it's out there. Give your ears a treat. So in summation, the Malcontent Power Duo featuring Mad Brother Ward cassette is out now. Limited edition of 102 copies. Each one is numbered. Yep, you can see that. There's number 6. This one's going out to my pal John Bridges tonight. Each one is hand signed by myself and Mad Brother Ward. $10 postpaid from me direct, or get it on Discogs and eBay. Tonight I will be listing for the first time the King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard reel-to-reel tape, which I entitled very thoughtfully Everything Everywhere All at Once. Features an ambient remix of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard along with 45 minutes of scorching, red-hot, professionally recorded live King Gizzard. It sounds so good on reel-to-reel tape. It should be banned. But until it is, I'll be selling them. This will be on my Discogs tonight. Reel-to-reel. What else we got? The Bloody Apostles. We are playing August 6th in New Milford at Fast Eddie's, 46 Old State Road in New Milford. The Bloody Apostles is me, bass player for Anti-Scene, guitar player for They Hate Us, and bass player for the Bloody Apostles. P.P. Duvet of the Murder Junkies and They Hate Us on vocals, Paul Ledney of Profanatica on drums, and Brian Zickafoos, top shelf visual artist, on guitar. That's a super group. We're playing New Milford August 6th. Check Facebook, and other internet locations for invites and event pages and all that. And that's about it. I'm done, baby. I'm done. Not bad for completely improvising my way through a show, not knowing what the H I was doing. Ended up being a lot of fun, and I'm glad you guys tuned in, and I'm very happy that you stayed with me for the entire event. Really, really good fun, and very good to have everybody on board every week for Tent Talks Tunes. So, that's it. I do hope to be back in about 157 hours' time. Until we meet again, this is Malcontent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.